Let me create a pipeline. Copy reach. So if you just go here and see, right, if you see here, let me minimize it. Under iterations and conditions, we'll be having this for each activity, right? So if you initially, if you make use of a for each activity, can we have another for each activity inside a for each activity? The answer is no. Okay. So in a single pipeline, I already have one for each activity, and inside that, what all I can have? I can have my copy activity. I can have data flow transformations. I'll be telling you about that in a while. Okay, I can filter it. I can use if condition and switch condition, but not for each activity. Okay, so what if there might be cases wherein if you want to make use of your for each activity inside a for each activity, how can you achieve it? Excuse me. So for each activity, inside for each activity, you cannot have it, so you can create an execute pipeline. So this execute pipeline can invoke another pipeline which is having for each activity. Okay, so this is how you can achieve this first thing. For each activity, inside for each activity, is it possible? Actually no, we can achieve it using execute pipeline. Okay. All right, so let me tell you about how to increase degree of this DIUs are there, right? Data integration units. So what are the different data integration units? Let me go to a pipeline. Suppose you are trying to migrate the data from one location to another location. Okay, and suppose if you have so much amount of data, if you have huge amounts of data, and if any point of time if your pipeline is taking so much time, then what is the best way to optimize your migration activity? Okay, how can you achieve this performance improvement? How can you do that? So basically you have something called as, so after you give your source data set, linked service, sync data set, sync linked service and all, you can come to your settings tab. Okay, so here what do you have? You have something called as DIUs, data integration units. Okay, so basically these DIUs are something, actually here if you see, per DIU there will be some cost assigned. So if you choose this 2, right, so if you choose this DIUs as 2, then one particular cost will be available. If you choose it as 4, then these are different parallel threads, we could say 8, 16, 32. So based on the workload, right, if you have huge amounts of workload, suppose if you want to migrate the data, few MBs of data, like 100 MB of data or else few GBs of data, then whatever the best possible approaches, you can just increase your data integration units. If you see here, what is it saying? So the value can be 2 to 256. When you choose this auto, right, what will happen based on the workload, right, dynamically this DIU setting will be considered. Okay, so if you do not know, like I might there might be situations wherein uh, the particular data could be increased or decreased, so it will be dynamic, you cannot say it sometimes, right? So at that point of time you can make use of this auto here. Okay, so if you make use of this auto option, what will happen? Dynamically at runtime, based on the workload, these DIUs will be selected. If you do not want your particular copy activity to select it dynamically, you can also use whatever numbers are present here, right, 2 to 32. So these numbers also you can choose. All right. Okay, so that is the first step to increase your data integration units, which are DIUs. All right. So after that, what do I have? I have something called as copy parallelism. This is called as degree of copy parallelism. So when do you make use of this degree of copy parallelism? Here, suppose if you are choosing something like four data integration units you are choosing, and here if you want to choose, right, copy parallelism is nothing but parallelism itself says that you are trying to achieve something parallelly. What is that you are trying to achieve? Functionalities will be there at whatever activities or whatever data you are getting, you are trying to execute that parallelly. So in order to execute parallelly, what do you need? You need something called as parallel threads. Okay, you need something called as parallel threads. So how many number of parallel threads you want, you can also give it here. That is called as degree of copy parallelism. So using this option, what can be achieved? You can achieve the number of parallel threads which could be run concurrently. If you want to run any parallel threads concurrently, not one after the other in a sequential fashion, but in a parallel fashion. So in order to achieve that, you can make use of this degree of copy parallelism. Here you can just specify how many number of threads you want. If you want 5 threads or 10 threads or something, based on the if you want to improve the performance, right, you can go with this particular degree of copy parallelism option. Here you can actually give the number of threads you want. So the number of threads you want, if you choose the number of threads you want, so based on that, you will be charged. Okay, since you are trying to use these services, right, so for a particular service which you are using, if you are using 4 DIUs, there will be one rate. If you are using this thing, right, inside your blob storage or data lake storage, there will be some other rating. Okay, so based on the features you are using, so based on that you will be charged. All right, so that is about degree of copy parallelism. This is basically used to improve your performance. These DIUs and degree of copy parallelism are basically used when your pipeline is taking so much time to execute, and if there is any performance related issue at that time, you can just suggest these options. Okay, so that is about your how to improve your performance for a particular pipeline if it is taking so much time. After that, what do you have? I have how to handle junk records in ADF. So in some scenarios, I'm getting few junk records. Okay. Okay, what are junk records initially? So suppose there is one employee ID column, and then I have employee name column, phone number, something. I have something called as address. These different columns. Okay, so what are the different rows I have for this? I have this blah blah blah. Some address is there. After that, you have two, and this is the name, this is the number, this is some address you have. Similarly, I have third, I have this. Here, after this, what are you getting? You are getting something which is not in a appropriate format. So actually, your employee ID, what is it expecting? It is expecting integer values. Okay, instead of integer values, you are getting some junk characters. Okay, something like this, or else it could be something like that. You are getting some junk characters. Okay, which is not in the appropriate format. Okay, so let me just give some other. Okay, so basically till here it is fine. Till here I am getting my employee ID is integer, employee name is string, phone number is some string, and then address is also some string. That is also fine. So after that, after three records, what are you getting? You are getting a record wherein you are getting some junk characters. Okay, some invalid characters. Actually, this particular column is expecting integer, but the values which you are getting are some random values, some other values you are getting which are not appropriate. So if at any point of time when you are trying to copy this data from one location to another location, okay, if you are trying to copy this data from one location to another location, what happens? Your copy activity will actually stop copying. Okay, because why is that so? Because it finds that there is one record which is having junk records which is not appropriate. because it will try to check with the schema. What is the schema here? It is in integer. So integer, instead of integer, I have something called as some junk characters I have. This is not appropriate. So in a single pipeline, you may not be having only a single activity. There might be some different activities, like you might have a get metadata activity. For each activity, inside that you might have copy activity, and after copying you are just trying to perform some set variable, and after that you are doing some other copy, and after that you are doing some other copy, and then something else, web activity, email triggering, something. Okay, there are different kinds of activities in a single pipeline. So what if here, when you are trying to copy, here itself you are getting this kind of record, this kind of bad record you're getting, junk record you're getting. So what will happen till here? Your pipeline gets executed successfully. At this point, right, that pipeline will fail under this particular activity. At this activity, right, your pipeline will fail. It will fail and it will no longer execute the activities which are in sequence. Okay, as we have in our control flows, we have one after the other execution, right, if it is sequential. So if one activity in our specific pipeline fails, what happens? Whatever activities are present in the sequence, those all will not get evaluated. So in order for your pipeline to not to stop here, okay, if you do not want this activity to get failed here, but you, instead of, if you have this correct record also, if you want to move to the next activity, if you want your next activity to be executed one after the other, one after the other, then there is an option in our Azure Data Factory. Okay, so that is called as fault tolerance. So basically, using this fault tolerance, what can be achieved using this, right? If you have any particular junk records, you do not want your execution to be stopped, but then you want to perform the next activity. Okay, you want this particular activity to be copied. Okay, this particular activity is performing copy activity, copy, right? So I want all these records to be copied, but I do not want this to be copied. Okay, fault tolerance means what? You might be getting some incorrect values or junk values. Despite that, you do not want your execution to be stopped. You do not want your execution to be returned fail at any point of time. So for that, we have an option called as fault tolerance. Fault tolerance. So using this fault tolerance option, let me go to the portal. If you enable this fault tolerance option inside your copy activity, right, inside the copy activity settings, we have something called as a fault tolerance. So if you make use of that particular fault tolerance option, what will happen? So inside the fault tolerance option, you have something called as skip incompatible rows. If you just make use of that skip incompatible rows, what will happen? I have 4 different records here, and this is the only record which is not incompatible to my schema which is present. Since it is not compatible with my schema, what I want this to be done? I want this particular record to be ignored or removed. Okay, I want this particular record to be removed, and I only want what all are the correct records are there, right? The good records, I only want these records to be moved further. All right, so if you do not want your copy activity to fail, and if you want to record these particular records, right, whatever are not as per your schema, then you can record those as well using this fault tolerance skip incompatible rows option. So let me show you that. Go to the portal. Here what do you have? When selecting this option, you can ignore some errors occurred in the middle of copy process. Okay, something like incompatible rows between your source and destination, files being deleted, so blah blah blah. So we have different kinds of fault tolerance options. So one is, if you want to make use of this particular fault tolerance option, if you do not want your execution to be failed at this activity, then you can just enable a simple option, which is these all grayed out. So only this is available for the moment. What is that? Skip incompatible rows. So if you hover here, what all you can see? You can skip incompatible rows. That means whatever are not matching to your schema, that can be skipped. And along with that, if you have any something like primary key violation, or else any field mismatching kind of things, right, those all will come under your skip incompatible rows. Okay, not only for the employee ID, if there is any other column which is actually expecting some other data type, but you are getting something else at runtime in the data, then you can make use of this option enabled. So once this is enabled, what happens? you can just record that particular junk values, or that particular row is there, right, incompatible row. So that will get removed when you're trying to copy it. Only those first 3 records will be moved, and the record which is incompatible, that will not be moved. So you also want to record whatever are not valid. Okay, so that record which is incompatible also, if you want to record, so how can you do that? You can just click on enable logging option. Okay, so here you can just specify the storage connection name, that is nothing but your linked service. Okay, generation 1, gen 2, or blob storage, anywhere, and you can just give what do you want. You want a warning or information, whatever. So based on your requirement, you can just choose one of the option. Okay, so if you want to log it, at a particular place, right, you can also browse it and then just specify the folder path where you want that particular incompatible record to be logged. Okay, just when you try to perform this kind of scenario, right, you will be able to capture all the records which are not compatible to your schema. This is called as your fault tolerance. If you just enable your fault tolerance, what will happen? What all other rows which are incompatible, those can be recorded. How can you record those? Using this enable logging option. All right, so here you have enable logging option, and here you can just specify your linked service and whatever folder you want, right, you can just specify here. As we log it for any particular scenario, like if you want to log for a delete activity we have performed, right, so similarly you can log it for this also if there are any incompatible rows. All right, is it clear? Anybody, any doubt?
Yeah, madam, it's clear.
It's clear for me, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so that is how to handle your junk records in Data Factory. And what else we have? How to validate if all rows are copied from source to target. So whenever we are trying to copy, okay, so let me copy this. So you are trying to copy from A location to B, from blob storage to data lake storage. So how can you validate if all the rows are getting copied from your source location to target location? Can anybody tell me how can you just perform this activity? When I'm trying to copy itself, I have said you this. Anybody, can
The,
anybody tell?
with the validation activity, ma'am, with the help of
No. Anybody, anybody.
get
So
with
when
the
you
help of the get metadata, ma'am. Because in the get metadata we can check box the for the first row column. So with that we know whether the all rows are present or not.
we can say that if the rows are present or not, but how can you compare, like if these many rows I'm getting in the source, these many rows I'm getting in the target, if both are same or not, how can you validate it? By using
Look
huh.
up.
No. So here there is a simple
Check
thing.
with the
We will
output.
be getting the output, right? So with that output, we'll have to compare. So inside your copy activity, right? When you're trying to copy from blob storage to data lake storage, blob to
In the output, we can see how many files are copied and how many files are came out and what is the
yes.
time.
Yeah, so we have a property called as rose red. Okay, rose red here we have in the source side, and after that we have something called as rose copied. Okay, rose red, rose written was there, right? Rose red and rose copied. So these are the two methods which we have. Okay, so basically using these methods, if we just simply write a if condition, all right, let me write that. So if condition, if you can just write this thing, right, if rose red is equal to rose copied, this is a normal how we write our if condition. I'm just writing in our particular scenario. If it is in our data factory, we will write it a little differently. Like how we will be writing, we'll actually make use of an equals function, and inside that equals function, what we will be doing, first activities output dot rows red. Okay, first activities output dot rows red is this one, and after that we'll be giving a comma, because equals will actually work with two parameters, right? The first one will be first activities output dot rows red, and the second activity would be activity second activities output dot rows red, rows copied. Okay, so this is how, or else let me write it for you, equals of
Ma'am, can we have a example on this by creating pipeline so that we can understand?
yeah, so for that I'll have to create a copy activity. If I had a copy activity, I could have done that, but I'll have to create it again. In this, I only have 3. Sync. Only one blob I have. I'll create another blob. Name it to ds underscore blob underscore sync. Linked service, however, will be the same. Since it's a CSV file, first row as header option. Then you can just specify the output part. Okay. Okay, so let me just try to preview the data here. And let us see what all details we have. I have how many rows? I have 5 rows. Okay. So now my intention is to copy all these 5 rows from one location to another location. Okay. So let me just try to execute it. But what happened? Didn't I debug it? Let it execute. Here we will be getting those parameters, right? JSON parameters. We will have to make use of those parameters, and then we'll have to give it to a if condition. If condition will actually work with, it will evaluate to either true or false, right? We will have to write a condition. Let me just copy this. And here we can make use of an if activity. Okay, after forming your copy activity, you can just give it to an if activity. if activity which will actually evaluate on a condition, right? If it is true or false. So here inside the true condition, what can we give? You can just make use of, let me write the condition first. Here you will have to write that particular condition, okay, on which you want to write, I want to compare to, actually I want to compare two parameters equals, okay, equals will actually work like this, pipeline dot parameters dot parameter. This is just one of the examples, so let me just use this equals operation here, equals method here. So here, right, we will have to give that particular whatever you want to compare, right? You can just give that. Actually in docs.microsoft.com we have one variable which is called as rows read is equal to rows copied, okay. Actually, okay, let me just use this. This one dot, okay, and dot data read, and then after that it will actually take another parameter also, right? So what is that? You can just compare it with the same one, and then here you'll just have to give the second option. What is that? Data written. Okay, so now are there any errors? No errors. If there are any errors, you will get a warning. All right, so let me just copy it here. Okay, so here actually what are you trying to do? You are just trying to compare. Okay, let me just delete it here and give an enter here. Okay. So if you see here, what are you trying to do? You have some property called as data written and data read. So you are just making use of this particular properties which are present here. And once, what am I trying to do here? I'm just trying to perform a if condition. Okay. Inside my if condition, I'm just trying to perform this. If this is equal to this, that means there is no data loss. And if there is no data loss, what do I want? That means my copy is successful. Okay. Let me just do that one. If it is true, if this particular condition evaluates to true, what can I do? I can just delete it, or else I can set some variable, or else I can just wait for some time or something. Any of the activity you can do it here. Okay, just to specify whatever file you want, right? You can just specify that particular file name which you want to delete it. And then you can also log. So once you're trying to delete it, what happens? You can just also try to achieve it, right? Like if you want to record it, you can also record it under this particular logging settings. Just give that particular linked service, and then give the wherever you want it to be stored, you can just specify that. Okay, so this is inside your only true condition, but I'm not performing any false condition. If you want to perform your false condition also, you can do it. If you want to set some other variable, or else if you want to wait for a particular amount of time or whatever based on the requirement, you can just achieve it. Okay, so here let me just go to my if true condition. Actually, where is the particular file present? Let me just go there and see. Inside my pipeline, inside my copy activity, where is the actual file? Let me quickly validate it and debug it. Okay. So if you see here, initially copy activity took place here, data, this much amount of data was there and this much amount of data was written. Okay, so after that it went to my if condition, and inside my if condition, since the condition got evaluated to true, my particular delete activity got executed. Okay, so if you see here, one file has been deleted. All right, is it fine, guys? So similarly, if you want to delete, you can delete based on the requirement, right? If you want to store it at some other position, some other place, or else if you want to perform, give it to another activity based on the requirement, you can just do that. But here, what am I trying to achieve? I'm just trying to compare if these both records or both files are same or not. If whatever data I'm getting from the source, if the same data is copied to my target destination, then if you feel like you don't no longer need that particular file or those records, then you can also use this if condition, and inside that you can just write a true condition here. Inside the true condition, you just give whatever activity you want to be performed. Okay, so if you want to delete it, you can just give it to a delete, or else if this particular condition evaluates to false, then if you want to do something else, like if you want to wait for some time or else perform any get metadata or whatever, so based on the requirement, you can just specify the false activity. Okay, so if you want to delete the file after copying the entire data, you can do that using your this activity. Okay, it guys.
Fine, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Fine.
So based on the, since the condition was evaluated to true, whatever is present inside your true will get evaluated. Okay, let me first publish it. So after that, what do we have? Okay, data flow transformations. All right, so till here we have dealt with different, what are the different kinds of activities and to how to perform those activities we have seen. So here we have another concept which is called as data flow transformations. Okay, so what are these data flow transformations actually? So here data flows are something like, we have two different kinds of data flows. So to perform this ETL transformation or transformation loan only, we have these data flow transformations. But there might be cases wherein you cannot achieve your functionalities using your only activities which are present in ADF. To resolve that purpose, we have our data flow transformation. Inside this data flow transformations, we have different kinds of transformations. Okay, one after the other, I'll try to explain. So for now, just understand that there is something called as data flow. So here, right, using this data flow, what will happen if you want to manipulate the data? Okay, you have your source, you have your sink. If you want to manipulate your data, be it to your schema, if you want to perform any manipulations, if you want to add any columns, if you want to change the schema, if you want to change the data which is present, okay, those are nothing but your data manipulations, right? If you want to perform any data manipulations between your source and sink, we can achieve that using our data flow transformations. If you see here, we have something called as data flow transformations. So there, if you want to perform any kind of data manipulations, like it could be to your source, it could be to your schema, it could be to your data, anything. Okay, if you want to change the data which you are receiving from your source, we have options called as different data flow transformations. So using that, you can achieve your data manipulations between your source and sink. Okay, so just understand that data flow means nothing but if you want to perform any data manipulations between your source and sink, you will make use of your different data flow transformation. So what is data flow transformation and how many types of data flow transformations are there? Actually, there are different kinds of data flow transformations. We have row modifiers, schema modifiers, and different kinds of transformations. I'll tell you one after the other. For now, just understand that we have different types of data flows here. One is mapping data flow and the other one is wrangling data flow. So what is this mapping data flow? So the one which we will be dealing with in our projects is related to mapping data flow. Okay, mapping data flow means what? To perform any kind of data manipulations or transformations between source and sink. Okay, so what is this wrangling data flow here? Wrangling data flow is also something like that only, but here also we do not have any coding part. So this is a code free implementation where you do not have any particular need to write the code. We can prepare the data. This is basically used for data preparation and Power Query kind of activities. Okay, so we will not be dealing with this. We will be looking at these particular mapping data flows. So in interviews they'll be asking what is the definition, like what is the main difference between mapping data flow and wrangling data flow. Then you can just tell that to perform any data manipulations between source and sink, we will be using our mapping data flows. Whereas wrangling data flows, right, this is a code free implementation. We do not have to write any particular code here. Okay, you can see it. Okay, in projects we will be using only this mapping data flows. All right, so here let me just tell you what I have told you, right, what a mapping data flow is. Basically mapping is nothing but to perform data manipulations or data transformations between where? Between your source and sink. So let me go to the portal and show you how a data flow will actually look like. So till now we have created pipelines and we have created data sets. Now we have something called as data flows. Let me click on that data flow and let me click on new data flow. Okay. All right. So here, since this is a data flow, let me give an appropriate name, df underscore some derived column, something like that. All right, so if you see here, this is a dotted, this is there, right, a dotted dash. Okay, just remember one thing, before going to perform this data flows, right, you have something called as a data flow debugger. Okay, if you just click this button on, it will tell you this is something like a cluster. Okay, internally what will happen, it will make the resource available for you. Suppose if you have written your data flow transformation scenario you have created from source to sink, if you want to execute it, how can you execute it? You can execute it only once your data flow debugger is on. So what does this data flow debugger actually do? It will actually run on a cluster. So once you, at the moment you start, at the moment you switch this particular data flow debugger on, right, before execution, it will internally try to acquire some resource. So based on some Spark job, automatically these are created by your Azure Data Factory. So just understand that the moment you are trying to switch your data flow debugger on, what will it try to do internally in the backend? It will try to acquire some cluster, nothing but some resource. Data flow debugger is nothing but similar to a cluster. Cluster means what? Inside the cluster it will actually try to gather some resources, so it will make some resources available for you. So if you want to execute this in our normal activities, we do not have these data flow debuggers and all, right? So this was actually 1 year back only this got implemented actually. So before that this was not there, this was in the preview mode. So 1 year, 1.5 year back only this got a data flow debugger got actually implemented. Okay, it was previously in the preview mode, now it is available in the projects also. So using this data flow debugger, what can you do? It will basically run on a cluster. So cluster, right, internally it will try to acquire some resources. So if you have the resources available only, you can execute your data flow transformation or any particular pipeline. Okay, so just understand that when you're trying to switch it on, what is it trying to do? It is trying to acquire a cluster. Once you have your cluster ready, it will, you can execute your scenario. Okay, if you want to see the output, you need this data flow debugger to be switched on. Remember that. After that, you have something called as a source. Let me just click on that add source here. Okay, add source here. And then if you say this is your source and this is the normal web page which will be displayed when you click any particular data flow. Here this is my source, right? So between your source you will have to search for a sync. Okay, between your source and the sync you will be performing your different kinds of data flow transformations. So I have told you, right, we have different kinds of transformations. Okay, what are those? These all are those different kinds of data flow transformations. We call them data flow transformations. In pipelines we call them activities. Here these are data flow transformations. So how many different kinds of data flow transformations are there here? Normal, how many transformations are there? Here you have under multiple inputs output categories. We have these many transformations. Amma, ja, kela ja, go. And inside the schema modifier, we shock marte talli. Okay, under the schema modifiers we have these many are there, right? These many transformations. So under schema modifier means what? Schema is nothing but your columns, right? Data types. For a particular file or a table you will be having those columns, right? So for that columns you will be having each and every column will have one name, right? So for that particular name you will be having some data type. So schema is nothing but those data types. All right, so these all categories of transformations are there, right? These can be used when you want to change your schema. Schema is nothing but columns, right? If you want to perform anything pertaining to your columns you can just do that using this schema modifier transformations. After that, formatters. If you want to perform any kind of formatting change to your data you can go with your formatters. You have something called as row modifier. If you have a table or a file and if you want to perform manipulations on your rows. Okay, basically row modifier means if you want to perform manipulations on rows you will go with this row modifier option. Okay, after that what do you have? You have flowlets. This destination is nothing but between your source and your sink you will be applying these different kinds of transformations. And after that what do you have? I have something called as multiple inputs or outputs category. So inside under this multiple inputs outputs category what do you have? I have something called as a new branch, join, conditional switch. These all I have. Okay, so it is not something like, you know, not only a single input. If you want to have another new branch you can go with this. If you want to apply joins you can go with this. If you have something like conditional split you can go with this. Okay, so I'll be telling you this, do not worry. For now just to see what all are the different categories of transformations we have. Under multiple input output category we have these many. If you want to manipulate your schema you have this schema modifier. If you want to manipulate the format itself you can use this formatters. If you want to manipulate the rows you have row modifier. Okay, so these all are the different things which are available. So initially I will have to gather my source. Okay, so you like you will be creating a data set and a linked service, right? So here also this output stream name is there, right? This is nothing but this particular stream name. You can just give something like emp csv file or whatever. So if you see here by default for the first time since I have not browsed any file it is having columns as 0 columns. Okay, so here the source type is a data set. Here you can make use of your data set. Here you can just choose the existing one or else you can also create a new one. Let me just use the existing one. Inside this what I have my emp.csv file. Okay, so if I just to make use of this option here and then go to the next option, here will not be doing anything. This is will not be doing anything here. So you inside your source, right? This is your source and this is your target. If you want to move the data from your source to target using this data flow transformations, you will have different transformations here. So basically using these transformations, you will be applying those transformations and you will be modifying either your source schema or else your row modifiers or any formatters or any inputs or outputs, and then you will be giving it to your destination. Okay, so here I will be telling you about a simple data flow transformation which is a derived column. If you see here we have something called as a derived column. what is this derived column? So derived column is something like, if you want to add any particular column, okay, if you want to add a new column to your existing schema, then you can go with this derived column. Add a new column to existing source schema or whatever existing source schema you can say, or else at a particular point from there, if you want to add any column, you can go with your derived column transformation. All right, so if you want to add a new column to the existing source schema, you can make use of this derived column. So how to use that? You just go to your plus option here. You can either search for it or else go to your schema modifier. Under that you have derived column. Okay, so here I'm not able to see the schema right here. Initially I have 0 as total, but then if you go to your data set, you have some, if you preview the data, right, you are able to see some 5 rows. So the schema is not yet imported. So for that, what can you do? Here you are able to see only 0, right? So you can just go to your projection and then click on import projection. If you see here, the importing has started. So once the particular file has been imported, you can see the schema here, column name, what is the data type and all you can see. Let it import. Once this is imported, you can see the number of columns, how many columns we have, those many columns will be updated here. Okay, so if you see here, I have 7 different columns. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, so these 7 columns number I can see it here. Thus that is with respect to your source. And then what else we have? 1 minute guys, just 1 minute. Hello. Okay, so inside your particular derived column, what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to add a new column. Okay, so if I want to add a new column, that means you are trying to change the schema, right? Here the schema is what? Here actually I have seven columns in total. If I try to add another column, the total number of columns will be 8 columns here. Okay, so what is for this particular transformation, what is the input incoming stream? This is my incoming stream. So what is that? It is EMP. So if you have any other source under this, right, if you have any other source, you can just choose that appropriately. Let me show that. If I click something here, so if you just go to your derived column and if you click on this input incoming stream, you have 2 different options. So here actually I want my particular this transformation to take the input from this one. Okay, so you'll just specify EMP. After that, if you want to change some name, you can just do that. And after that, if you want to add any column, right, you can also add that particular column. Okay, you can just specify some to the existing column. If you want to update something also, you can do it, or else if you want to add another new column, right, you can also do that. Suppose I want to add something called as some date column, and then let me go to this expression builder. Here you will have to write the expression dynamically. Okay, so if you want to return the current date, suppose have an option called as current date function. If you hover here, it will show you the example. You can just make use of any example here. So for now, I'm just making use of a current date option. So here, if you can refresh it, let me just scroll up. So if I am creating a new column with the name as date, and inside that, what is the value which I'm sending? I'm sending this current date option. So the moment you execute it, right, if you want that particular option to be available, you can just make use of your current date expression. Okay. And if you refresh it here, you can just see how the data will be coming. Okay. This is one place where you can see the output actually. we have something called as the data preview tab. So inside that data preview tab, we can just see the data. Okay, so if you see here also I'm able to see here. All right, let me quickly save and finish it. So here, what did I do now? I have just tried to add one particular column, which is date column. Inside that, what is the value which I'm sending? I'm sending current date. Okay, so that is one thing. After that, you have optimized. I'll tell about this in a while. Do not worry. Inspect and data preview. Here I have something called as a data preview, right? So if you preview the data here, you will be able to see the output. Okay, so you can either see the output at each and every transformation. If you want to see the output, you can just click on this data preview and you can just refresh it. This is a little time taking process. It will take a little time and then you will be, your output will be displayed. So meanwhile the output gets displayed. Okay, the output is displayed here. If you see, actually I had 7 columns in my source side. Let me delete this because I'm not using that. In my source, I actually have 7 columns, but what am I trying to do using this derived column transformation? I'm trying to add another new column. So totally I have 7 plus 1 column, which is 8 columns. If you see here, did I get the date column appended? Yes. So to my existing source, this is my source, right? Till here, this is my source. To this source, I'm trying to append one column, which is a date column, and the value which I'm passing inside that is dynamically at the point you have executed, on the date you have executed. I'm just trying to get that particular value. Okay, so this is one way to make use of your derived column transformation. So after that, what can you do? You'll just have to specify the appropriate sink here. Okay, and then create a new data set, or else yeah. So here I only have one blob. Okay, blob sync is also there, right? So let me just give that to my blob sync, and let me just give some file here. Let me write it something like dc output file, something output file dot csv something. Let me go back to my data flow here. So here also you can preview the data. Okay, so here you can just specify the file name, just come back, output to a single file, whatever file name you want, you can also give it here. Okay, so here what is it telling? Output a single file requires single partitioner. So if you see here, you have different kinds of partitioning here. Use current partitioning, single partitioning, set single partitioning, set partitioning. So if you choose this particular single partition, what will happen? Only a single file will be created. I'll show you that also. Okay, so for now, I'm just using the single partition, and I am trying to set a file name. You can just specify some dc output file.csv, some name I'm giving here. Here in the data set also you have given, right? You can just ignore that, not an issue. Let me just click on. Okay, seems like there is some error, cannot contain a file name. Yeah, so actually, since I'm already giving the file name in my settings, I should not give it inside my here data set. Okay, let me just remove that. Now let me try to validate it. Okay, there are no errors. Let me try to what happened? Error still sync 1 in data flow df underscore derived. What happened? Transformation stream is invalid. Fix errors to enable data preview. No errors. Then why is it saying like that? Let me try to publish it. Okay, publishing done. Now let me try to see. This is my sync. Here I have settings. Here I have just given output to a single file, and then here also output to a single file, and I have just specified the name. After that mapping, this is not an issue. Here I'm choosing single partition. The sink currently has single partition set in optimize. This will take a little longer, but that is also fine. Data preview should come actually. Let me refresh it once and see. Because I've published it, the data will not be lost. Let me go to my data flow here. Let me just try to data preview it. Okay, since the page was not refreshed, I was getting that error, but since I have published it, I can refresh it. If you do not publish it, if you refresh it, what all changes you have done, those will be discarded. So if you see here, let me go back and go scroll right. So here, if you see to my source, I have successfully appended one column, which is my date column with the values. Okay, so this is what your data flow transformation is all about. So this is how you can execute it in that particular window. If you want to execute it end to end, how can you do that? For that, you will have to create a pipeline, new pipeline. Inside that, you have something called as data flow activity. So this is one of the activity which is available. You can just make use of that particular activity and then just specify some name. Okay, some name I have given to that particular thing. Here you will have to invoke that particular data flows here. So how can you do that? You can just select the one which I have just created. Okay, so these are not mandatory. This is the only where. So if you just open it, what will happen? That particular data flow will be opened. So here, let me quickly validate it for any errors. There are no errors. Let me just debug it. So as you execute your normal activity, right, you will have to execute your data flow activity as well. But it's just that, you know, since you have something related to your data flow transformation, initially you can come to your particular pipeline, create an activity of this data flow activity, and inside that you can also create a new data flow. This way also you can do it, or else directly from here also you can just add it, and after doing your data flow transformations, you can come back to your pipeline, drag and drop this activity, and then invoke that particular data flow. Okay, you can do it either ways. So in the backend, this is getting executed. It will take a little time. So in the end, since I'm trying to, you know, manipulate the data, move the data from one location to another location, not only that, I'm also trying to add a column, which is called as a date column. Inside that, I'm sending some whatever current date is there, right? That thing I'm trying to send. So let us just wait for this data flow to execute. So once this executes, in the output, what is the output actually? In the output path, actually, I should have the file copied. Okay, with an additional column. Let us wait for this to complete. Okay, this has successfully completed, it seems. Okay, think it is successful. So now let me go to the pipeline and see where I have placed the file. Double click it. Sync, go to sync. What is the path actually? I don't remember the path. Output container. Okay, let me open my output container and see a file with file name dc output file.csv. Here I should have a file with appended date column. Done, right? So this is how you will be executing your data flow transformations. Is it clear, guys? Were you able to understand? Let me know if you have any doubts here.